So, big news out of Triumph Motorcycles with the announcement of two new beginner models in the form of the Speed 400, a Neo Retro option that aligns with their, you guessed it, speed models, and a Scrambler 400X, which is obviously a Scrambler. The question is, how competitive will these new models be, both in performance specs and, of course, price? On the bright side, they are two quite distinct models that fall within the Lambs category here in Australia and should offer a more affordable entry point into the Triumph family for all riders, with the Trident 660 being a very premium motorcycle for the beginner market in comparison. From what I can tell, these are the new Triumph models being produced by Bajaj in India at their Chakan factory we'd heard rumours about, with India receiving these bikes next month and the rest of the world likely to see them very early in 2024. Triumph are promising these will be extremely competitively priced, which is kind of what you'd expect with the bikes produced in India. I would think the Scrambler 400X should be a close match to the Svartpilen 401 on price with that statement, but competitive is relative. So what are we getting? A 398cc liquid-cooled single with slipper clutch, 6-speed gearbox, ride-by-wire and traction control. Power is just shy of 30 kilowatt or 40 horsepower, and torque hits 37.5 newton meters, so not far off the Ninja 400 for power, but edging it out on torque at lower RPM too. Those exhausts look decent too, with the collector well hidden away, with the Speed 400 being my preference of the two in that regard. Chassis wise, it's a new perimeter spine frame in steel with the bolt-on subframe. The swing arm is aluminium alloy, which saves weight and is nice to see. Both bikes run 10-spoke wheels alloys, however they are different designs, different sizes and run different tyres. 17 inches on the Speed 400, a 3-inch front and 4-inch rear with the Metzeler Sportec M9 RR tyres. The Scrambler 400X runs Metzeler Karoo Streets and a 19-inch front by 2.5 and a 3.5 by 17-inch rear. Suspension is the same between the two models, both running a 43mm big piston fork, however the Speed only gets 140mm of travel to the Scrambler's 150mm. It's a similar story with the monoshock with preload adjustment and external reservoir, 130mm on the Speed and 150mm on the Scrambler as far as travel. The cost of the Scrambler's extra travel is of course seat height, significantly so at 835mm or 32.9 inches, to the nice and low 790mm or 31.3 inch seat height on the Speed 400, which will make it one of the most inviting non-cruiser beginner motorcycles as far as seat height anyway. The Speed 400 is also lighter at 170 kilos wet, and the Scrambler 400X weighs in at a hefty 179 kilos on account of all the little extras it runs for the off-road riding. I'll mention those shortly. There's a few differences between the brake setups, both run ABS, but the Scrambler gets it in switchable forms, so you can turn it off for the off-roading I would assume. No mention of an off-road mode, and that may just switch off the rear, which is more of the norm these days. There's a single front disc with 4-piston caliper, however the Speed runs a 300mm rotor to the 320mm unit on the Scrambler. Both run a 230mm rear rotor with floating caliper in comparison. The dash is also shared with an analog speedo next to an integrated digital display in a pretty elegant solution. I like it anyway, and a TFT would seem a bit silly on these machines, particularly with the shape limitations. There's a USB-C port somewhere for bar-mounted devices too, which is nice to see, even if I couldn't spot it. Both run a 13-litre tank, and there's no fuel consumption figures at this stage. Apart from the seat height difference, Triumph also tells us the Scrambler 400X runs different geometry, more suited to the theme, including a longer wheelbase, longer trail and shorter rake angle. Extras on the Scrambler 400X, which will likely bump up its price too compared to the Speed 400, include a longer front guard, grippy pegs, cast steel brake pedal for crash resilience no doubt, a sump guard, headlight guard and different pads for the more progressive brake performance. Overall, the Scrambler will be a bit more upright and commanding, as Triumph put it, which isn't a bad thing. It also gets traditional mirrors to the bar ends on the Speed 400 with both running different seats, and there's even an immobiliser. The bike comes with a 2-year warranty and 16,000 kilometre service intervals, although personally I'd be changing the oil quite a bit more often than that if I owned one. We don't know the price at this stage, which I think is a major factor in these beginner machines in my mind, maybe because I'm particularly cheap. Triumph telling us it'll be competitive is a good thing, but I'd expect the bike to be around that Svartpilen 401 price for the Scrambler 400X. Obviously, traction control is a nice bonus, but the Triumph lacks the adjustable suspension, and I'd say the bikes are fairly evenly matched apart from that. Both are made by Bajaj too, which produces the KTM 390s and Husqvarna 401s. Owning a 401 and looking at the pics provided by Triumph, I will say their bikes look a little bit of a step up in build quality compared to the Husqvarna, particularly the bodywork. I would think that pricing should land somewhere between the 401 regardless, and maybe stretch up to about Ninja 400 pricing. Not because that's in any way a comparable model, but it's about 10% more than the 401. And if they try and push up to the Honda 500 territory, well, that wouldn't be very competitive in my mind. Keeping in mind the Trident is a fairly pricey piece of kit, if an exceptional one, it will be interesting to see where the new 400s land. So overall, the Speed 400 and Scrambler 400X are ticking a lot of boxes in my mind, with the price the big unknown. We're not seeing adjustable suspension except what everyone has, which is just preload on the rear, but the traction control is a nice little extra which probably balances the scales there. But let me know what you think. Are Triumph onto a winner with these new 400s? What do you feel about them being made in India, and what kind of price would you pay for one? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. I'll probably do a follow-up video comparing the loadouts to the nearest competition in the next week or two, so stay tuned for that if you're interested to see how these models stack up in the spec sheet battle. Stay safe out there.